nasty laugh. Sorry about that. And welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Now we're going to be looking at flooding. The rains have come, so it becomes an issue for us to look at very, very seriously. A recent report by the Nigeria Hydrological Survey Agency, NIHSA, for its 2020 annual flood outlook, AFO, revealed that no fewer than 102 local government areas in 28 states are at risk of flooding. Now that the rainy season is here, as well as the floods, how do we handle this matter, especially in light of the current pandemic? Well, the right person is here to answer that question as well as many other questions, and he is Mr. Olalekan Sodeinde, who's Permanent Secretary, Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for coming to talk to us this morning. Yes, I know that we go through this ritual every year. The rains come and we keep talking about, oh, don't put your dirt in the gutters, We go through this ritual every year. And then when we have floods, we now invite people like you and ask them, what are we going to do to avoid flooding, especially in Lagos, that is below sea level?
Thank you very much. Well, the structure of your question is a bit tricky. The word avoid. You can't avoid flooding.
Okay, let's see. How do we handle it?
Okay, manage it.
Manage. Thank you.
Because actually, flooding is a natural phenomenon because rainfall will happen. It's a natural thing. There's a water cycle. It goes up, it comes back, goes up, changes, its natural state. But the real term is stormwater management, because rain is not the cause of the flooding. It is what that rainfall event becomes. Naturally, the water cycle requires that some part of the volume of the water volume should go into the ground. Percolation, shallow and deep, like about 50% of that. Another 40% should stay on the greens. The trees, the grasses, the water gets stored in various places. And maybe about 5 or 10 should go as runoff. That's what we call the storm water itself. That's what should be seen to be moving. But fortunately, human quest for development and habitation have distorted all this natural balance. If only we can create that God-given balance, then we'll have, if you just cast them back to Ikoyi of old, there were not that many drainage infrastructures there. You had natural drainage existed. There were no fences, there were no barriers. You had barbed wire fences. From your house to my house to her house, the water keeps on until it gets to the natural outflow, the floodplains, the Koi parks of those days into the lagoon. But unfortunately, human quest for development, we put a lot of barriers, we sealed a lot of the surfaces that should take the percolation part of it. We cut a lot of the greens that should take another volume. We're not having what we have near 100% runoff. And it's mind-boggling if you now think of the kind of capacity of infrastructure required to convey all this. So I'm just trying to show a picture of the enormity of the problem, actually.
And that picture paints a very bleak one, indeed. Because if we look at the number of states that the NIHSA talked about, rivers, Cross River, Delta, Lagos, Ondo, Bayelsa, Sokoto, that's up north, that's supposed to have a lower water table, Kogi, Niger, Kaduna, Gombe, Adama, again, far north. And you think that because they are up there, their water table, which is lower, we shouldn't have that much of flooding. But now that's where they're expected to see major floods there. Benue, FCC, Nasarawa, Delta, Oyo, and all those states, 102 local governments in all of these states. If indeed the problem of human activity has caused the natural drains to be blocked up, much of the natural drains have been blocked up, so to speak, because we have walls. You talked about them. We have walls, we have roads built up, the greens are mostly gone. So at the end of the day, is it that there is no hope? Because we keep getting these floods. From 2012, we've had major floods sacking many communities. And almost every year, we have this kind of flood. What's the hope?
Can we cascade history?
Okay.
No. You said 2012.
Beyond that,
beyond there, we didn't have flooding, right?
No, we had.
We've always had.
We've always had.
That's what I'm trying to say.
The most serious was in 2012, if you recall.
Yeah.
That's why I picked 2012.
Yes, I remember. Even the
always
state
had-
government said people should not come to work. because
We've
Lagos
always
was
had
underwater.
flooding. See, there are various kinds of flooding. You might think you're in the desert. Flood happened in the desert. Dubai was flooded some time ago. Recall?
Yeah.
Last year. Yeah, you're in the desert. But you see, two things determine flooding: the intensity of the rainfall and the duration. Land has a lot of, I'm sorry, I don't know
go
any other
ahead.
way to explain that.
We're listening.
There's a carrying capacity for soil, soil absorption rates. If the rain is intense, really intense, and the soil can't absorb at the same rate, there'll be some
Water
peak, because
retention.
you're having, flooding happens when you have peak flow in a short time frame. That means I'm having a huge volume of water coming at me that I can't take. I can eventually take it with time. So stormwater management is where you attenuate the peak flow. That is the best practice in stormwater management, attenuation of that peak discharge. So technology requires that we go green. What am I saying here? Sustainability requires that if we can make every square meter of land to retain that semblance of natural balance that ought to be. Because what we have now is a lot of officers believe that quick collection, rapid discharge, and get water away from me. That is not feasible. It's not sustainable. But what engineering proposes is that let every square meter of land be able to hold this, reduce the peak discharge within the time frame. When the rain is falling, let's discharge just a minimal amount of that runoff naturally. When the rain stops, we can now discharge the other part of it. Rainwater, for example, is a very clean medium, very clean. So, green housing design requires that you now provide storage for rainwater, whereby when it's raining, you store it in your property. When what goes out is just that 10-20% naturally that will convey and not create any flooding. When the rain stops, this water will still go out through the same
Channel.
infrastructure that has been provided that are unencumbered. But in case whereby everybody just throws everything out at the same time. At the same time. So, two words, peak time. So, that's why, it's something that we have to educate ourselves. You can't just sit in your comfort zone and say, government, do this, do this, do this. We need to engage ourselves and talk to each other, have a conversation on what management role should you play, should I play as an individual, and should government play? Government is doing its own very well. We're providing infrastructure, we're managing them as best as we can. I say that with due humility, sir, as a man. We're doing that.
Okay.
Government spends money year in, year out, providing and maintaining infrastructure.
Which is the question here, because there are those who are already asking. Year in, year out, we already agree that floods will happen. Flood waters will come. But it's the management of these flood waters. And when we begin to get situations where year in, year out, we're still getting the same level of flood waters in terms of waters that are retained on the surface, we're still getting almost the same level, then the question of management comes in. How much of education is happening to the citizenry? Is it enough to just announce that, okay, this number of local or communities are going to be affected by storm waters this year, so evacuate, find somewhere safe to go? Is that enough? What kind of information is being given out to the citizenry so that they prepare? Because already the rains are here.
They will always be here.
Yes.
They'll always
No.
come
Well,
around.
we're in need already, and
We need them.
in the last few days, I think for about 2 or 3 days, it rained continuously, whether drizzles or, but it rained continuously in the last 2 or 3 days. So, what kind of information should the people be getting, or are they getting now?
Well, should be getting, are getting. I'll talk about are getting.
Okay.
Now, we keep saying, well, let me quickly bring in this indices, climate change. Climate change,
yes.
I need to bring it in. Pre-climate change, brouhaha, I don't think we have this kind of level of flooding anywhere. I said earlier in my talk that whatever happens to the runoff, it goes somewhere. And levels are rising, internationally acclaimed. Now, what are we telling people? Flood will happen. Water will flow from a high ground to a low ground.
Yeah.
But water will rise from a low ground to a high ground. Flow and rise, two different things. Drainage infrastructures are designed to accommodate flow. That's what with their conveyor system, tertiary, secondary, primary channels. But whereby you now have buffers, because every natural river, every natural drainage channel, be it a river, has what we call buffers, floodplains. That when, yes, it's going to happen, the stage of the river is going to rise.
It will fall into
So it
the
has to
flood.
go into those green area, buffers, the floodplains. Some are permanently with water, some seasonally. And water is volume. Whereby, if water spreads in the floodplain, it disturbs no one, natural habitat. But when you and I now decide to now go into this water habitat, no problem still, but we need to provide the necessary engineering to go with it. If water is losing area, what does it gain?
Level.
Depth. It gains height. So you need to give alignments for this volume that you are putting together.
Okay.
These alignments exist.
Okay. The alignments exist. We'll pick up from the existence of the alignments when we'll come back from this break, please. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still talking about stemming out, managing the floods. We're not stemming it again. But, and we still have Mr. Shodende here. Mr. Shodende, you talked about, just before we went on that, we were talking about when we, being the residents or individuals, decide to go into the buffers for the natural drains, and then we build without necessarily creating those alignments. But when they do exist, what happens?
Now, like I said, where they exist, the alignments were created to take a volume that's going to come with a height. They used to be this high before, now we make them very high. So we expect people to create the energy in their own land. And when the water that we're packing together, that we're displacing into this alignment, because there's a master plan for Lagos State for all natural alignment. We have 169 channel systems in the master plan. Now, just leave these alignments. Let the water come here. This is the height you're to maintain, right? We find out that oftentimes people don't get to that required height. That doesn't even, it's not a real major problem, because once the alignment is free, once the water comes, water will still find its level. It has a good space to flow. But people now, these thoughts go within this recognized, legally identified channel alignment. That is the biggest problem that we have. Because it's only when the sanctity of the alignments are maintained that you have a route you want to improve, that is construct, that you want to maintain. It has to be left intact, but it's a running battle whereby people develop even within. That is the biggest challenge government has with maintaining its, this alignment. So it's a running battle.
Okay.
A quarter stream, for example, that is a major link in Lekki axis. It runs from Victoria Island all the way to Ibejuleki. It has a two-way flow. We're at the moment trying to ensure that we create that river. But it's a 42-kilometer long river that's supposed to be a buffer for that access. So we're not saying it's wrong to go into the wetland, but we need to do the needful to ensure that we give room for this natural element that's supposed to be in the buffer, the water. That's what we're here to appeal for.
Now, Festus Akimboyowa says it's time to upgrade our drainage system in Nigeria, and we need to stop building on floodplains.
But then, when you talk about this floodplain, who gives the approval for the building?
The state.
The state.
I can tell you without even asking anybody, most developments in Lagos, in floodplains, don't have all the approvals required. I used to be in LAPCA, so I can say it without even asking.
When that is found out,
Yeah.
what has happened to those developments? Are they brought down because
Exactly, sir. When we find out that you are within the right of way of our channel, there's no other way.
Wow.
Because what you're doing affects a lot of people. It's embarrassing everybody. So we won't, because of one individual, allow people to suffer. So we bring them down.
But Mr. Shodainde,
So have we been bringing down?
Yes, we are, sir.
Mr. Shodainde, do you
Yes, we are.
think that people are made aware of this enough? Because if they know that their building is going to be brought down, they're not going to be stupid enough to go and build in the floodplain. Is there enough awareness by the state government?
Yes, sir. Yes.
There is.
There is. Because the law says if you want to develop, there are legal guidelines for, that you have to follow. And if you get to any government office, they will tell you these are your requirements. There's a list of requirements. One of the requirements is when you're building in a low-lying area, or you're building next to a stormwater channel, existing one, you need to get what they call a drainage clearance. That will tell you, okay, this is my land. Yes, it's your land. How high should I reclaim for me to have comfort when I move in? What is the setback I need to give to this alignment so that I won't be within the right of way of the drainage channel? So all these conditions will be given to you. So, but if you now just buy the land from Shodainde family, you didn't get, because if you go to ask for building plan approval, they tell you, do you have a drainage clearance? Go and get a drainage clearance. But you didn't even go to get an approval.
Drainage clearance.
Yeah, drainage clearance. Drainage services, drainage clearance. Okay. So if you don't even attempt to get
that for the first time,
because maybe you didn't develop in a lowland or close to a canal.
Okay.
So if you didn't even attempt to even legalize your development by getting a development permit for your structure, you just go there, you buy the land, you just start development. So how to guide you on what you require? Because it's a conversation. Okay. I want to build. Government, this is what I want to build. Is it approvable?
Yes.
Before I can approve this, go here. So it's a conversation.
Yes.
But when you don't start a conversation, how can we guide? Okay. But we do give general information.
Okay.
Like if you look at the media every day,
okay,
government keeps talking about before you build, go and seek approval for your building. It is something that government continually does day in, day out.
So this year's expected floods are coming at a very unique time, the pandemic. The Ogun Dam is likely to open soon on this end, so that increases the amount of water in Lagos during the floods, and the Lagos water table, which is already below sea level. So the question now is, what should the residents of these areas that are likely to be flooded do? I know Lagos mentioned some areas, some local governments, mainland, Etiosa, Isheri, Ikeja, some parts of Ikeja. No. So what should the residents of these areas be doing, besides going to buy SUVs?
Well, I don't know.
or motorboats.
Well, there are some areas. You see, being prone to flooding varies. Some areas are going to have river flooding.
Okay.
That will stay for a while. River flooding is whereby the river stage increases and goes to the floodplain. If you're there, the water's going to be there. And the lagoon, which, I mean, Lagos is the most downstream of several river systems.
Yeah.
So we don't have anywhere to discharge. Even if there's flooding in Ogun State, eventually it will flow out.
Into Lagos.
But we are flowing nowhere. The lagoon is here. The lagoon is right. I mean, when it's raining, the ocean is tight. I mean, so we are just going to be, we are the buffer to some other states.
Yes.
So the thing is, the areas that have river flooding, like I tell people, the life is the most important thing. You will know the extent of the intensity coming. Please save your life, first and foremost. While for the Sherry North area, government is coming up with a proposal. We discussed earlier when we were off air that there is a depression in the Sherry North, almost about 4 meters depression. So we need to ring fence the areas that have been developed. So even when the water is rising, it won't flow into the low-lying area. People will say Amsterdam has pumping stations. So we're going to have our own pilot pump station development in the Sherry North area, whereby where rain falls, we'll take the rainfall water out, but the flood water outside won't be able to
Come in. Okay.
Do you get? So,
Yes.
I mean, it's already a low-lying area. There's no energy to flow. Rather than receiving water from outside, we're sealing it up. But rain will still come
Down.
into that area. So whatever is now coming as runoff, we will now have to just
Take out.
think about added energy, pumping it out.
Okay, but you know when you take out now, you'll now be adding to the pressure for those who are out there.
No. Out there is already the river. When I say ring fencing, what happens is, natural energy requires that water flows naturally, depending on the gradient. When there's no gradient, you now need to have you have to impede, add energy to take the water out.
Okay.
So when you're pumping to the reservoir where nobody's been disturbed. So, but you need to do it catchment by catchment because it wasn't planned to be like that. So this is a new, technology that we're bringing into the Lagos state. Now, for other areas, as mentioned, is your issue of intensity and duration. What we have mostly in Lagos is flash flooding, not urban flooding. Yes, this place might have some ponding, but within 1-2 hours, I give you my word, because we've done our work. Within 1-2 hours, the water will go. Because what you have then is the capacity of the channel cannot take what is coming at that time because we are having peak discharges that they were not designed for. Peak discharges. So the thing will pond because it will back up a little bit. But when the rain stops, it will leave.
It will flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But any area where you not have it staying for 24 hours, 48 hours, then we have urban flooding.
I didn't know Messiah.
No. More than one day.
Okay.
It never happens.
Well, okay, that was a long time. Okay. Now, Victor Owo says that there are natural drainage paths. Lagos is a mega city. As a mega city, must build a lot more paths. In over 30 years, when it rains, Femi and Yontuga in Surulere and the estates around are mightily flooded. No way out for the waters. Meanwhile, there's a canal behind
System
fences.
5. I can tell you that if he lives on that street, he will confirm that within 2 hours.
Now.
Yes, the
Femi
water
and
goes.
Yontuga.
Yes, now. I grew up in Surulere. We even have a quarters in Census area, Census Close.
Okay.
Drainage service has, when we're building that channel, we have a quarter that was established there. Yes, they have flooding that comes. Ritalori, all those areas get it. But within 2 hours, it goes.
Okay.
Okay, Victor, please let us know what happens. But then this series on, this person didn't say where, but he said that's Manuel Miles. He says the problem with flooding in Lagos is that the drain systems are not deep enough to carry the amount of floods, of waters that are coming. He says it's local government that the drainage is not up to 2 feet.
Okay.
So when I asked the question about the kind of information that should be going out, what the people should be doing now, my neighbor, for instance, is building. and sand has covered the gutter in front of the house. So when water runs, and that street goes downwards, so when water runs from the gate into that street, it gets to that point and stays.
Now, the question is, should anybody educate such a person? You know that this drain is meant for water. Should
Remove the
I
sand from
need
the
to
gutter.
tell you that this is an impediment that needs to be removed? But even at that, we're still doing it. The government from day one, this new government has always said, please keep all drains clean of refuse. Don't dump garbage on the roads. Because when you dump them on the road, where does it end up? In the channels. So you say, it takes two hands to make a clap. And that clap has to be made.
Okay. Well, Victor has not answered that question, but I'm sure he will get back to us. Okay, so finally, if you're going to say a word to Lagosians and indeed Nigerians generally, what would you say to them?
Well, the rains are a natural occurrence. They will come. Flooding will have to be managed. But we'll have to play our parts. Like she said earlier, it is the duty of every resident to keep the drain in front of our tenements clean. Legal duty. Not sure any talking here. The law says that the stretch of drain in front of your house is your right to clean.
Okay.
While government cleans the secondary and the primary, which we're doing. So we want to have that clap. Yes, please.
Mr. Olalekan Shodain, the Permanent Secretary, Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, this is a time where you are very, very busy. That's time of the year where you are very busy. So we just wish you luck.
Thank you very much.
Dealing with floods all over Lagos.
Thank you very much. We were trying our best. Thank you very much.